So yeah, I was looking forward to a pretty quiet Christmas this year. I had just yesterday recorded a review video that was supposed to come out this Saturday, which is now being bumped to my usual upload day of Monday, because it looks like Endnight Games just last night, or this morning, depending on where in the world you're located, released the long-awaited gameplay trailer for Sons of the Forest, the highly anticipated sequel to The Forest. Now I'm a pretty big fan of The Forest. After just playing a few hours of it back when it first launched in its early access state back around November or December 2014? No, that's not right. Well, that's when I started playing it anyway. I believe it did come out a little bit earlier. I did what anyone would do, and I bought a few copies for my close friends as gifts, so that way they could all experience the same degree of terror that I was consumed with. Because if you're going to suffer, you might as well suffer with friends. I mean, I assume that is the reason why people play Call of Duty and like other multiplayer games that are shit, but whatever. More fun with friends, right? Isn't that the mantra we always hear? But here in this case, it's actually true. The Forest is a game that can work in single player, but is really a lot more fun in multiplayer because the mechanics allow it to be. 6 years later, not to mention over 300 hours in game later, in my case, we have Sons of the Forest. The cinematic trailer didn't tell us a whole lot other than confirming a handful of basic but still important tidbits of information. Mainly being that the post-credit scene at the end of The Forest where, spoiler, Timmy, the son you were trying to rescue in the first game, now an adult, has discovered the existence of one or more islands where other similar human experimentations were done, with the scene inferring that Timmy is setting out to visit said island or islands in some sort of sequel game, which we now know as Sons of the Forest. We also saw that guns will play somewhat more of a role in the sequel. However, the developers have confirmed in recent interviews that the vast majority of the combat will still be melee-based. There were a few other smaller lore-related observations, but aside from that, the initial cinematic trailer wasn't very telling. Also, the limited amount of gameplay we saw then looked a bit rough and unfinished, which is understandable since that trailer is now around a year old. But now we get to the new gameplay trailer that just dropped today. Okay, so the first thing we see is what I feel like is definitely going to be the intro cinematic. After seeing that initial plane crash cutscene sequence over 100 plus times now in The Forest 1, I'm definitely getting a sense of deja vu seeing this now. I don't know why, and this is kind of a very specific complaint that can be very easily remedied before the game's launch, but the facial animations and models feel a bit off here. It might just be the video. I've tried watching it both in 1080p and in 4K, but it looks weird at both resolutions, leading me to believe it is a model issue, not a video quality issue. After that though, we get our first new look at the forest, the new forest, the Sons of the Forest, whatever you want to call it. And it looks really beautiful. The trees and vegetation all look beautifully rendered. And between that and the new snow-capped mountains in the far distant background, you get this really nice natural color palette. We also get a shot of the character holding what looks like a GPS app of some sort, running off a smartphone. An interesting way of evolving on what the map and compass provided players in Forest previously. Next up, we have probably one of my favorite new quality of life additions, being the reworked and seemingly far more detailed wood chopping system. I think The Forest had a fairly brilliant set of crafting and resource management mechanics, which wood chopping definitely played a key role in. I've chopped up easily tens of thousands of logs in my time playing The Forest, and the actual animations for the wood chopping was a bit unpredictable and unreliable at times. You could often find yourself chopping on one side while axe marks would actually only appear on the opposite side before gradually making their way towards you as the tree got closer towards being fully chopped down. I can see some significant improvements in the visual feedback here compared to that prior system. I especially love these small chips and chunks of wood that come flying out with each hit, along with the small amounts of snow that drop every time you chop away at the tree. And that's another thing, we actually seem to be getting proper seasons this time around. You can see all the trees and ground covered in a layer of snow, which is something we never got in the original Forest game. And I hope this continues beyond cosmetic map decoration though. Survival was difficult enough in The Forest for new players, but if you're a decent survival player, like I ultimately ended up being, it wasn't really all that hard after a bit of time once you've mastered the basics. This time around, I suspect that the new season mechanic will present its own respective pros and cons that will influence the overall gameplay. And indeed, I hope that does prove to be the case, as that would be kind of interesting, having to constantly adapt to different changing weather conditions. The first Forest game kind of experimented with that in regards to thunderstorms, which itself influenced the enemy AI and some small aspects of the map, but overall wasn't a big game changer. This, again, I think will play more of a role comparatively. We also see what looks like a lodge or some kind of cabin. Very similar in shape and style to what we got in the first Forest game, but hey, it worked as a structure then, and I'm sure it'll work fine here in Sons of the Forest as well. Along with this, we see what could also possibly be a friendly mutant of some kind. It's really weird. It has that classic disfigured, modified human design that is consistent with what we've seen in the past from mutants. But it definitely looks more on the human side rather than the mutant side, at least, again, judging by what we've grown accustomed to in the past. The player does not appear to be wearing paint of any kind, so clearly the AI isn't reacting out of intimidation, but rather seems to be idling in a neutral state for some reason. I have no clue what that means, but the idea of a neutral or passive mutant does bring up some interesting new possibilities gameplay-wise. We then see another clip of the same mutant doing some kind of Playboy model pose next to a fast-flowing waterfall while you hold a crossbow at the ready. I don't have any words for that, I really don't know what that means, but it definitely got my attention, that's for sure. At this point, we're 30 seconds in and we get our first glimpse at some nighttime combat, with the player facing off against what I imagine will be our new basic enemy type, your typical cannibal villager variant, just given a slight visual upgrade. I've gotta say, the gun reload animations here look really smooth, I'm quite impressed there. It would also seem that we're getting a new resource gathering mechanic. Players will now be able to dig into the earth with shovels. What exactly we're digging for, I don't know. Maybe it'll just be rocks? Maybe the developers finally wisened up to the absurdity of thousands of rocks just casually laying above ground all over the place, left, right, and center, and decided to put them back in the earth. Or maybe this is to gather some new material or mineral altogether. It's hard to tell based on this brief clip. We do seem to be dragging up a funeral cask at one point, which, okay, isn't exactly what I had in mind, but maybe it's something story related. Neat, I suppose, but it's kind of hard to make any deductions based off what little we know here. While most of the trailer focuses appropriately on what you can do in the new forest, we do get a quick look at the new research facility, with this narrow, dark hallway as our only tease. Fine by me, I'm surprised we even got that much of a look in. The original Forest game very much kept its endgame content under wraps. I can only imagine the reason we're getting this in the trailer here is that either we're going to be going into more than one research facility over the course of the game, or it's because the developers kind of know the cat's out of the bag, so to speak. Most players already know about the existence of said facilities, so they feel comfortable teasing its return. Again, it brings up more questions than it does answers, and I'm fine with that, to be honest. After this, though, is one of the seemingly few major new gameplay mechanics, aside from digging. It seems like you'll have some kind of base of operations set in either a house or a large apartment of some kind. If I had to guess, this will serve as effectively a lobby of sorts for multiplayer groups. But again, we don't have anything definitive on that yet, though. The player seems to be able to at least be able to access certain tools exclusively from here, such as this mask that the player uses to intimidate some of the local hostile NPCs. There appears to be some kind of cooldown or recharge rate, where you can only use it for brief periods of time, if the percentage bars and other number indicators are anything to go by. On a lesser note, we also spot the toy on the left-hand side, the same toy that could be pieced together in the Forest 1 if you bothered to find each individual piece, which admittedly not many people did, since the things were about as distantly scattered as humanly possible. After this, we get a few cool shots of the new overhauled wood crafting system, showing off what you can do with logs. All cool, not much to say there. Thumbs up from me. We see the enemy NPCs seem to have gotten slightly smarter in this newest iteration. We see a couple shots of them attacking or jumping over player walls and other obstacles, and even a shot of a single enemy NPC trying to drag away one of the player's logs, but very, very, very slowly. My first thought upon seeing that, assuming they try that with me, was, bitch, how dare you. Whoever tries to pull that bullshit with me is getting incinerated for the sake of producing bone armor, assuming that's still a thing this time around, which I hope it is, because bone armor is the best kind of armor, well, aside from mutant armor, of course. Also, I don't know why, but we did get this really unintentionally funny clip of one enemy NPC examining the face of a dead enemy NPC, and leaning in close as if he's about to kiss him, but instead he just casually yeets him instead, sending his body flying like 6 feet backwards with barely any effort. I would love to see that replicated in-game because that is just, there are no words for it. We close out the trailer with a few quick shots, one being of the player hiding behind a mask, again the same mask we saw earlier. Now that we see it in practice and gameplay, it does remind me a bit of the FNAF masks in FNAF 2. I know, God forbid I mentioned FNAF, but it's true, this is what it reminds me of. Another clip we see being a preview of two really creepy looking mutants. One being this tall, hollow, I don't even know how to describe it, thing. and a second two-headed crawling mutant, both of whom look pretty interesting to play against. Overall, the trailer was a bit shorter than I was ultimately hoping for. I was anticipating it being between 2 and 2.5 minutes long, and it ended up being about 89 seconds long, which is admittedly on the shorter side for your traditional gameplay trailer, but hey, it serves its purpose as a new teaser trailer. I do hope, for the sake of transparency, that the developers do put out a proper, full-length, final gameplay trailer, hopefully sometime early next year when they're ready to announce the actual release date and launch details of the game. I'm curious whether they'll go for the early access route again. I think the early access thing worked out pretty well for them the first time around with The Forest, as the constant post-launch updates guaranteed a steady stream of gameplay content for YouTubers to have fun experimenting with. It kept things fresh and interesting for a number of years, and I would be surprised if Endnight Games wasn't already planning a similar roadmap for Sons of the Forest as well, but only time will tell. At any rate, that's where I'm going to be wrapping it up for today. You know the deal. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to click the like button to help YouTube promote it within their internal algorithms. And be sure to let me know what you're looking forward to most in Sons of the Forest. Did you play the first Forest game? What are you hoping that they preserve from that game? Or what do you want to see added to this new sequel? Let me know in the comments section down below. I respond to stuff, so if you're looking to get my attention, commenting below is the best way of doing so. If you want to support the work I do, subscribing and clicking the bell to get notifications when I upload next would really mean a lot. I tend to upload weekly. I've been a bit more productive than usual lately because my current university semester is done, and the next one probably isn't going to start up for about another month or two, due to, well, recent global events, so to speak. But yeah, you can usually expect at least one new video a week from me on average. My goal was to hit 1,100 subscribers by the end of the year, which was a pretty high goal, I admit. And one we're probably not going to hit, but we're going to be pretty damn close. So if you haven't subscribed, but watch my videos anyway, number one, thanks for your support regardless, but number two, it would really help even more if you did subscribe, as it at least somewhat forces YouTube to slightly keep you in the loop when I do new stuff. This is WarriorDan signing out. Happy Christmas, everybody. Stay safe, stay awesome, and peace out.